Welcome to a personal demonstration of the Audit Toolbar. Christiaan will show you the core audit workflows from the Audit Toolbar and demonstrate how you and your firm can become audit happy. Enjoy!
Right, welcome and thank you for taking the time to watch this video about the Audit Toolbar. This is a very brief introduction, light touch demo on the Audit Toolbar that will hopefully give you a much better idea as to how much value this can add to your firm and your workflows. Just a brief bit of background before we get into the detail. The context and the message behind the Audit Toolbar was certainly one of my own experience in previous life as an auditor, but it's one in audit firms all over the world, whereby we tend to spend 70, 80%, if not more, of our time working in Excel. And to this point, I've not really seen anything in the market that can start speeding up that time that we spend in Excel. Now, we've been able to create that with the Audit Toolbar, and that's what I'm going to show you all today. There's also a consequence of this increased efficiency in Excel, whereby you start to see a consistent output coming from a platform that is largely inconsistent, and that will lead to increased audit quality and all sorts of other positive outcomes. Okay, so let's get into the detail. Now, on my screen, you should see the Excel ribbon, right? And the Audit Toolbar installs directly into that ribbon. So you click onto the Audit Toolbar tab, and you can see it's absolutely packed with features and functions, all aimed at making your life easier whilst you're doing your audit work within Excel. Right, now at a high level, we've got 5 distinct workflows within the Audit Toolbar. We've got the cleaning and structuring section here. We've got formatting and enhancing, we've got templating and documenting, followed by analyzing and sampling, and finally ticking and bashing. Now we're going to lightly touch on each of these sections in our presentation today, yeah, let's dig into it. Now the best way to kind of look at everything on here is to think of a scenario and start working through that scenario. Now the scenario is as follows. We are about to start an audit engagement. We've asked the client for a whole bunch of things. One of those things that they have sent us is an extract of their general ledger. This is what we have on screen, and this GL is exactly as it was when it got extracted out of that accounting system. Now, this specific one got anonymized, just so that we can use it for presentation purposes, but hopefully it'll give you a very good idea of how the system works. Okay, now that we've got the GL, we need to go in and start cleaning and structuring this. We need to do some opening balance testing on it. We need to test it for a few anomalies. We need to select some samples from it. And finally, we need to prepare working papers. And we're going to do all of that within the next 10 minutes or so. Right, now, cleaning and structuring this data set. I can dig into this as an auditor and start applying all sorts of Excel formulas and magic to try and get the data in a workable format for the rest of my audit. However, I do have the Audit Toolbar, so I can head over to a function called GL Cleaners. Now this function does exactly what it says on the tin. It allows us to clean up an entire GL with just a few clicks. So all we need to do now is explain to the Audit Toolbar what accounting system this data has come from. In this case, we're talking about QuickBooks Desktop. So I'll click on that, and we will be presented with the screen where we can edit some settings, ask for some additional analysis, or we can just simply click continue and give that a few seconds to work its magic. All right. Now the Audit Toolbar is busy working through that unstructured data and is busy giving us a nice and structured result back on the other end. Okay, now the process is just completed, and I just want to take it a step back and take us through what's actually happened here. So we started with the raw data. It's still there. We can always come back to it if we need to, but the Audit Toolbar has inserted 2 additional sheets into our workbook. The first one being the same data set, but everything is neatly tidied up, structured, all the problems have been resolved. We can now easily sort and filter and search as we need to here. And the second additional sheet, my personal favorite, is a pivot table summary of that entire GL. Nicely broken up for us by account in column A. Opening balances for each account has been isolated. Month-to-month movements is available, as well as our final totals. What you'll notice at the same time is that we also do a light level analysis on these accounts in the pivot table. So anything in green indicates that it is abnormally high, and anything in red is abnormally low when compared to the average. Right, so that was a brief look at our GL cleaners and the supported accounting systems. You can see that on the screen there. And that's not to say that the Audit Toolbar can only work on those systems. The Audit Toolbar has been built to work on any kind of data set, any Excel file that you might encounter. Now, of course, we know we might get into situations where we are looking at a data set that is not a GL, or perhaps our client has some custom accounting system, and we still need that data to be cleaned and structured. So staying within the cleaning and structuring workflow, we're going to have a look at some of the semi-automated cleaning functions available to us. So looking at this data set here, there's a few issues that we need to resolve. Straight off the bat, you can see there is a lot of blank rows, blank columns within this data set. And so we're going to go into the cleaning and structuring section here, and we're simply going to call delete blank rows. And you can see that all clears out, followed by delete blank columns, and you can see all of that clears out. Already we can see a bit more structure in our data set. The next problem we often see in accounting is that our account descriptions are coming in as headers, and really I want to see that on each and every row. So I'm going to go ahead and call autofill down. I will then just point it to the appropriate column, click OK, and you will notice a new column where all those account descriptions have been autofilled down. All right. Now there's plenty more functionality within the section that can aid you and help you in cleaning and structuring your data sets. Things like combined sheets within the active workbook, or perhaps combined sheets from a folder full of Excel files. Followed by that, when we go down the more menu, you can see you can split up columns, you can split up entire sheets, you can do things like you remove your ins and outs, and much, much more. But the overall message here, when it comes to cleaning and structuring your data, you can either do a fully automated clean using the GL cleaners, or a semi-automated clean making use of the other functions within that workflow. Okay, right. Now let's move on to formatting and enhancing. So formatting and enhancing really holds hands with the cleaning and structuring, because oftentimes the formats that we are presented with is not exactly the formats that we're going to want to use. So things like, can we easily manipulate our date formats, right? So now you can, because you can convert a date to date text or date text to date. Another example would be sometimes we need number manipulation. And if you go into the number manipulation, you can see that you can convert them to text. You can go from text to numbers, positive to negative, absolute values, and plenty more options within that. So any sort of formatting issues, formatting problems you want to resolve, you can make use of this menu over here. On the face of this workflow, you'll also see the flip signs function. That is the most popular one within the section. So we have added it to the face of that workflow. Right. Now, a nice thing about this is that these functions work really well if you start adding them into your quick access ribbon. So something that I, for example, always do as an auditor is I want to copy and paste my values as I'm working through calculations. Now, the function is there. It's a very simple function. But if I just right click and add it to my quick access ribbon, you can see there's a button available in that ribbon now. So wherever I want to copy and paste values, I can simply highlight the range, press Alt on my keyboard, and you can see the 5 popping up there. So copying and pasting values is now equal to Alt 5. How easy is that? Alt 5, and you've copied and pasted values. All right. Another thing I want to flag out in this section is you can store all of your favorite formats. So let's say a very basic format like a bold is something you want to store and you want to recall. Let's complicate it a bit more. We'll go for bold and the yellow highlights and perhaps an underline. So a very specific format set up there. We're going to go ahead and click on F1, and you can see it is now absorbing the formatting settings of that cell and applying it into F1. So wherever I need to use it next, I highlight the range and I call the same function, and you can see it's now applying those settings. And again, also very good idea to add that to your quick access ribbon. So in this case, you can just highlight your range and you press Alt and 6, and now that function, that quick formatting functionality will be applied. All right. Cool. So that covers our formatting and enhancing. So we've worked through cleaning and structuring, we've worked through formatting and enhancing. Now, I want to take us over to analyzing and sampling next. And for this, I want to go back to our QuickBooks GL that we started off with. So we've been able to clean and tidy this up, and we've got a nice structured pivot table here. And you can see my opening balances have been isolated thanks to the Audit Toolbar. Now, what I'm going to try and do here is I want to see if the client actually started their financial year on the numbers that we signed off on in the prior year audit. So I've got my prior year TV on hand as well. Now we're going to make use of the matchup function within analyzing and sampling to identify if there's any gaps between what the client started their year at and what we signed off on in the prior year. Now, there's plenty of use cases for this matchup function. It's essentially a comparison tool, so the list is endless. However, we're going to apply it here on opening balances. All right, so I've clicked the matchup function there. It's going to ask me for a few inputs. Now I'm going to go ahead and in the first two inputs, select the account description in this case as the key between our data sets. And on the second two inputs, I'm going to just tell it what values I'm trying to compare. So I'll go ahead and compare this opening balance here to my prior year final. All right, now once my parameters are filled in, I simply click OK, and you will see a very nice comparison there. You can see 6 accounts is where it found differences. It has identified the what the client said as their opening balances. This is what we said as our final, and this is a difference and a potential adjusting entry that we can recommend. Right. So the matchup function, like I said, is essentially a comparison tool. There's plenty of use cases for it, but essentially it's a one-to-one comparison. There is also the batch recon further down in that menu, and the batch recon allows you in a similar fashion to do a one-to-many comparison. Right. Okay. So looking at our scenario, we have now been able to go from raw messy data set, nice and tidy, structured summary in this pivot table, all the way through to opening balances completed. Now, the next part of what I want to take us all through is to do with selecting our samples and then subsequently trying to detect some anomalies in our data sets. So let's start off with sampling. Okay. Now, let's assume for a moment that we have, according to our firm's methodology, identified how many items we need to test and what sampling method we need to apply, and we're just coming into the execution phase of our sample selection. This is where the Audit Toolbar can be of great assistance. So we're going to go ahead and click on the sampling tool, and you'll see a menu popping up, and this menu will give you quite a few different options in terms of sampling methods. Right, so let's just go for simplicity's sake. We're going to select random. All right, now you see this this window opening up where we need to simply explain to the Audit Toolbar how many items we need. And in this case, I'll go for 10 items. And there's a lot of other settings we can go for as well. I'll return to them in a second. So random sample of 10 items. I'm simply clicking continue. And the Audit Toolbar is now working its way through that data set. Right. So you can now see my result here. We have 10 items selected at random. We also have a very detailed description of all the parameters that went into selecting the sample, just so my manager knows exactly how I got to this answer. But simply put, that is how the sampling tool works. You choose your method, you enter the parameters, the Audit Toolbar will give you a new sheet, list out the sample along with a very detailed description. Okay. Now we can step things up with the sampling tool quite a bit. So let's go back to that random sample. I'm going to draw another random sample, 10 items again. But this time around, I actually want to add all of my individually material items to my sample. And I want to make sure that we remove certain items that might not be relevant. So we're going to click onto the advanced section here. And over here, you can see we can click on to include material values. We enter that materiality value. And finally, there is an exclude section here as well, which we can use if needed. I'm going to go ahead and exclude anything below 15. Right. Now, I want to also draw your attention to the last part of this sampling screen. You'll see there is a highlight selections and an email sample option. So let's highlight those selections. That's going to make our life a bit easier when we come back to review later on. And if needed, we can also tick the box that says email sample. This will attach an Excel file to an email for you, which you can send around internally or perhaps directly to your clients if needed. Right. Now, leaving the sample as is, we're going to click continue and allow the audit toolbar to work its way through that data. All right. Now remember, we had quite a few parameters added into the sample. So you can see here, we've got all of our material items. They've been all grouped together at the top. We've got our 10 items at random at the bottom here. You can see none of the figures selected has dropped below 50 because we did ask it to exclude anything below 50. And you can see this description is explaining in detail exactly how we got to this answer. Now, if I do go back to the original data set, you'll actually notice the highlighted rows indicating all the items that has made it into the selection. And so if I'm coming back reviewing for unusual items or anything else, I know exactly what's been addressed and what's not been addressed yet. Right. Now, just a quick last look, the sampling tool does include random, fixed interval, monetary units, debits and credits only, material only, number of items per month, or number of items per parameter. And so hopefully for most scenarios that you come across, you will have an option there in your sampling tool. Right. Now, staying in the analyzing and sampling section, the last thing I want to talk about here is just looking at some further analytics that we can do. And this is really getting to the point much quicker than we normally would have to, right? I'm talking about those audits where you might have gotten stuck in doing data analytics, trying to set up complicated systems, and trying to track data through completeness sections only to answer a simple procedure in your audit file, right? Over here, we've just gone for simple execution on Excel data that you might have in front of you. Things like looking at this data set, I perhaps want to figure out which of these transactions took place over a weekend, right? So I go into my sampling and analyzing workflow, and I simply click the by weekend function. I point it to my date column, and I click OK. So as simple as that, you'll notice the new sheet being generated in the Audit Toolbar, and you've got all of your transactions that transpired over a weekend. Right. Another great example of an analysis function that we might need to run is posted by, right? We just want to see who's posting entries in our data set. So we run posted by, point it to the right column, we click OK, and you will notice a very nice table explaining to us exactly who posted entries and how many entries they posted. Of course, this does come out as a pivot table, which means we can easily double click and just drill down to understand what those transactions relate to that's been posted by John in this case. All right. We can also run a test for any gaps in our sequences, if you think of your revenue testing, and there's plenty of other functions in here to kind of aid you in detecting those anomalies. Things like, let's find all of the fully rounded transactions, right? So we click on find rounded, point it to the right column, and then we indicate the rounding level that we are interested in. In this case, I want to see anything 10,000 or above. All right, so I'll click OK. And again, you see that new sheet being generated. And over here, 3 transactions have been identified as fully rounded. And so I can now take that back into my audit file and compare that to my significant judgments or my journal entries just to see if it is in alignment with what I'm expecting to see. Okay, so I was looking at the analyzing and sampling workflow. What I'm going to do next is head into templating and documenting. And this section is really about managing templates in the firm. The headache is always one whereby when you're doing your audit and you're trying to get access to a template, you sometimes find that there's a template sitting on your audit software. There's more templates sitting on the intranet, sometimes on the server as well. And sometimes you're in a position where a partner emailed you 3 months ago saying that in this specific scenario, if you need to do A, B, and C, you need to use the template attached to this email. So you're immediately in a position where you need to look all over it and try and double check if you're on the right version. Now, instead of all of that, we allow in the firm a central repository on your server that everybody who's got the Audit Toolbar can connect to, which means you've got a live sync to a master copy of templates throughout the entire firm. If your firm has multiple branches, this synchronization can take place across all those branches as well. Now, what it looks like is as follows. If I'm working in this Excel file and doing my thing, I simply need access to a template. I can simply click onto one of the template menus and pull the template that I need. the Audit Toolbar will simply create that sheet in my workbook, and you can see my template is now ready for me to use. Now, what goes into these menus and these descriptions, all of that you have full control over within the firm. So you decide exactly how your folder structure looks, what you're naming your templates, and what content goes into them. All right. Now, in extension to general template management, we also have a function here that eases up your process of creating working papers. So instead of just a static template like the one that we saw now, we could be in a position where we actually want to create a working paper to explain the work that we've done. Now, looking at this test that we just did a few minutes ago, where we tested for fully rounded transactions, I'd actually like to get this onto my audit file and documented what my conclusions were around these numbers. Now, that means I need to get it into a working paper. And so similar to the other template functions, I simply select the template in question. I'll go for a standard working paper here. And the Audit Toolbar will now take my data and put that into a working paper for me, as you can see there. All right. And again, with working papers, the same with basic templates or full templates, you've got full control over those menus. You can add 200 menu items there if you want, or you can just have a handful of generic ones, depending on what works best in your firm. All right. So that was covering our templating and documenting. There is a few other functions here. Things like pushing data to Word, PowerPoint, or Outlook if needed. You do have those options. And you also have a separate category for sampling templates if you want to manage those separately. Right. Now, since we're in a working paper, this swiftly brings us to the final section, or the final workflow rather, within our 5 workflows. And that's looking at ticking and bashing. Right. So I'm going to go ahead and start ticking off the work that I've done here. And I can simply go into the ticking and bashing section and click on the tick mark I need to use. So in this case, I'll go for that green tick. You can see it simply inserts that green tick into my selected cell. Even if I select multiple cells, I click the tick mark, you can see the tick mark gets inserted. Now, once I'm done inserting my tick marks, I can go to an appropriate location for my tick mark legend, like I've done there, and I can simply call that tick mark legend through the ticking and bashing settings, and you can see it's actually created that tick mark legend for me and added some descriptions. Now, the key thing with this ticking and bashing section is this is another example where you can create that consistency throughout the firm, right? Because we do start you off with a few default tick marks that you can use. However, you can customize everything in here. So you create the tick marks that you're going to use in your firm, and you can create those centrally. Similar to the templating and documenting, you can have a central repository of all your tick marks and all your tick mark legends that you can go and edit whenever you need to edit that, and everybody in the firm will synchronize back to your version. Right. Now, there's a number of other functions and features within each of these workflows that we didn't quite cover, but I think that gives us a very nice overview of the Audit Toolbar. And just a few final comments I want to make on the help and support section here. The Audit Toolbar has been built in such a way that it is quite intuitive, and most Excel users will be able to just hit the ground running and get into these functions. Now, if you do want to read up a bit more about a function to see how it works, you can click onto the guidance button in the help and support section. You'll see a guidance panel popping up, and it is busy loading active guidance on all the functions in the Audit Toolbar. All right, so let's give that a second to finish loading. Okay. Now, what it does is as you use functions in the Audit Toolbar, the guidance panel will actually update to explain those functions as you go through. So as an example, I'll do a flip signs on these numbers here. So I click flip signs, you can see the function has run as expected, and on the right, you can actually see the flip signs guidance coming up. So if ever you want to learn more about any of the functions in the Audit Toolbar, that is your go-to. All right. Now, if you do want to go through further training, or if you've got a team of new trainees coming in, you can go into the Get Support menu. You will see a Get Training button that takes you through to our online learner management system, and you can sign up your team there to make sure that they get that training. It's filled up with 2 to 5 minute videos of every function in the Audit Toolbar, and there's quizzes and workbooks and case studies, and you can make your way through all of that. All right. Now, what if you need support? Now, hopefully you would have learned that at the Audit Toolbar, support works very differently. We're not going to send you into a call center where you're going to hang on for 2 hours straight. We assign you a client success manager. And when we do, the client success manager is a qualified accountant and ex-auditor and somebody that can basically make Excel do anything, right? Because we want you to call somebody up and actually get the support that you need. So if you look at the Get Support menu here, you can chat to your client success manager on WhatsApp. You simply click that button, it opens up WhatsApp, and you can have a discussion with them, or you can call them directly by just dialing that number. Right. In addition to that, you can log a ticket or email support if needed, and we will always be there to guide you through and help you through any support that you need.
Thank you for watching this high-level demonstration of the Audit Toolbar. For further information or help, head over to www.audittoolbar.com and make your firm audit happy.